Keith, and please take a roll call.
Here.
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 Smith. Tom Lampy.
Here.
John Benson. Here. Bob Von Wolfrat.
Present on the phone.
Denise Pavlik.
Present on the phone.
Andy Buffington.
Present.
Ellen Hagan. Deb Crable. Dave Ness.
On the phone.
Jason Leonard.
Here.
Rob Rotter.
Here.
Mike Casper. Carol Lund Smith. Larry Smith.
Here.
Linda Fredrickson. Kelly Grosskirth. Yeah, 13. Quite a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Yep. If we could do introduction of board members for those on the phone, starting with Robert Van Wolfrat.
Bob Von Wolfrat on the phone.
Anybody else on the phone?
Dave Ness.
Denise?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Introduce yourself, who you represent.
Oh, sorry. Denise Pavlik, Scott Emergency Communications Center, representing communication centers.
Is there any other board members that are on the phone?
Linda Fredrickson on the phone.
And who are you representing, Linda?
Iowa EMS Association.
Thank you. Anybody else on the board members on their phone? Okay, we'll start with
David Ness.
Hey, David, thank you. Go ahead, Patrick.
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Andy Buffington, Winnebago Hancock Emergency Management Communications, representing communication centers.
Larry Smith, Kankakee County Emergency Management.
Jason Leonard, Waverly Police Department, Municipal Police.
Tom Lampy, DPS.
Chris Myers on the Swick.
Jeff Swearinger, Department of Natural Resources.
Marty Smith, Iowa Department of Public Health.
Jeff Sundholm, Department of Transportation.
Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff, representing sheriffs.
Mr. Benson?
John Benson, Iowa Department of Homeland Security.
Okay. Looking for the approval of today's agenda. If I could get a motion for that, please.
Andy Buffington, so moves.
Andy Buffington, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Jeff Sundholm. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Approval of meeting minutes from March 8th. We had a chance to read that. If we could get a motion for that, please.
Larry Smith moves.
Larry Smith, the second.
Marty Smith.
Marty Smith is second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to the Swick Report. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Chair Lampy. Morning, everyone. I'll start off with some general announcements. I will be headed to the joint SAFECOM National Council of SWICs meeting in Portland, Oregon in May to discuss interoperability. In general, the floor is open. If you have any topics you want brought up at a meeting like this, please let me know. Regarding LMR, there will be some special executive summit sessions regarding P25 technologies and user needs. So I'm happy to pass on our requests and concerns and even questions on to people that are very much connected to the development of those items. Also of note, it looks like they're adding more social media aspects to the agenda, getting in front of the information flood that can come with an event, unplanned or planned over social media can be a challenge, and it looks like they're going to discuss that as well. So if there's anything you'd like to see me bring back from that, please let me know. Back to the P25 aspect of it, some things I plan on bringing up our interstate interoperability challenges that we've kind of uncovered with our regional interoperability committee meetings, and our solutions for working to overcome some of those. I think that we've been able to follow some states' models that have been established and even add some areas for improvement as well. I'm going to bring up some logistical hurdles with encryption on geographically expansive networks. This would basically be representative of a statewide network, and the need for a robust compliance assessment program, and a need to expand testing capabilities. In the past, some of this testing has always kind of revolved around, well, how do we get, a microsite or a micro network next to another microsite or network to do some of this testing? And that presents tremendous costs and other travel issues. They're starting to debate about ways to do this that may eliminate some of those barriers. And I'm going to try to bring some perspectives to that might be beneficial to them, and also potential things that were difficult in the past that might overcome. I'm working again on outreach to more counties and local stakeholders. I'll be in Albuquerque County on Monday for a stakeholder meeting for interoperability concerns, and then also FirstNet. It'll be a rather long day, but it'll be very worthwhile. I'm working on scheduling more meetings as well. The winter weather kind of precluded that in many ways, but now that things are finally starting to turn up, it looks like I'll be able to get back on the road a little bit more frequently. I was able to recently present also at a meeting covering CMed in Des Moines at the Polk County Emergency Center. More or less, it was kind of a general presentation on what CMed could look like if it were adapted to the Isicsb platform. And it wasn't necessarily telling them to do anything one way or another, but it was a kind of a look at the possibilities. And I think we were able to answer some questions there and figure out a good pathway to go, or at least they're working on it, I should say. The encryption on the Isicsb network, we met on Tuesday, April 10th. We were able to refine a couple of standards that will now be sent on to technology or the standards working group for review. I think the way the standards have evolved over the past couple of months has been very positive, and I think it'll be relatively straightforward to get those passed on through standards and up to the board level for approval. They do cover some of the more germane items like inventory disposal and key management, but if nothing else, it can be looked at best practices for other agencies going forward, perhaps. We started tackling issues of key update cycles and the management of said keys. This is the part that is the most difficult of any type of encryption discussion on any large network like Isicsb. This was an initial discussion, but it was very positive and productive. I think we really started defining some of the problems regarding logistics and technology and associated challenges. And especially when you start talking about interoperability networks, again, that cover a large geographic area, and that's a big part of the problem that we have to overcome. Other states are also working on this. Nothing was decided or concluded, but I see us making steady, continued progress. I think that our timeline for fully vetting this aspect of Isicsb is unchanged for the most part. I'm thinking maybe 12 to 24 months to kind of flesh all this out. And then ultimately we'll be able to figure out if it's doable or not. And, I see some positives both ways. Either we get it done and it works, or we come back with a very defined white paper that we can take to the standard setting groups, the user needs groups within P25, and say, this is what's precluding us from getting this done. And then that will help drive some of the conversations and product going forward to improve it not only for us, but for everybody. So there's positives coming out of this with both outcomes. I was able to assist the technology committee in a meeting a couple weeks ago regarding subscriber testing. Chair Updike will have more on that coming forward, and I will be able to chime in on that as well. Getting down near the end of the list here, don't worry. Many RICs have had their third meeting on interstate interoperability and transport interoperability. There's a couple left to do, but once those are done, we'll get those rolled up into standards, and we'll get the final stamp of approvals, and then we'll send them on to the standards working group. I want to thank everybody involved for those meetings. They're too numerous to participate, but the feedback I've gotten from neighboring states as SWICs has been very, very positive. They are impressed with the caliber of people that we have on those calls. And some also comments that I received was that they want to be involved more often. So we're starting to make a very good name for ourselves. So that's very good. An announcement, the next COMEX is slated for April 23rd and April 24th. That is going to be a very large exercise as far as geographic area it covers. If you remember the big derecho that went through in June of 1998 that caused damage from the Sioux City metro area all the way towards the Quad Cities, that's what they're going to be reenacting. It's kind of a 20th anniversary event and exercise. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. And then also of note, getting back to the social media thing I mentioned early on, OEC released an excellent article about managing social media information. It has some case studies, suggested best practices, and some other items that might be of interest. I emailed it out to board and committee members, board members and committee chairs. And if you have that and you think it's of use to your local stakeholders, please feel free to forward that on. And I'm sure Jim Lundstedt could elaborate on that a little bit later on in his report to the board. With that, that's all I have, and I will yield the floor back to you, Chair Lampe.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the SWIC? Okay, Blake?
Good morning. House File 2254 was signed by the governor 2 weeks ago. So most of that is effective upon signature, and it basically allows us to begin the implementation of our virtual consolidation plan. Discussed at the last number of meetings here, discussed it about 30 minutes at the council meeting, so I'm not going to rehash it. You're more than welcome to watch the video of the council meeting, but we'll also have some informational webinars that will get scheduled if you are interested in exactly what that means and what is possible for any of your PSAPs. $21,000 remains in the training public education fund. That needs to be used by the end of June. Any money remaining just remains in the fund, but it does get reset to $100,000 at the beginning of July. And also 6 GIS grants were approved for a total of $87,250. Any questions?
Thanks. That's short and sweet. Thank you.
I saved you 30 minutes.
Okay, move on to the UGC Chair Buffington.
Thank you. Work on getting the RICs more engaged continues. There's a few that are functioning pretty well. We have new leadership in some of the regions, so that continues. So encourage anyone that has an interest to dial in for your region RIC calls. A lot of good information there, a lot of opportunities. We have 4 applications today that have been reviewed last month and are going to be recommended for approval from Monona County and Union County for new applications. Adair Guthrie and Marion County Sheriff have amended their applications. There were some clarification issues that went out there. I will tell you, I want to give some kudos to Bob Kemp from Adair Guthrie EMA. Really, that's how the applications should look. He had supporting documentation from all his municipalities, and so I just want to say thanks, Bob. That was absolutely fantastic. We're working on changing the matrix. For those of you that ever had a chance to take a look at it, on its good day, it's confusing. If you're not very familiar with what we're looking for, then it can be difficult. So we're going to be changing that, and that includes coming up with some easy to understand and solid definitions of what user 1, 2, 3, and 4 mean. And I can't even say with 100% confidence that we have it locked in. I think 1 and 2 is relatively easy. 3 and 4 gets a little bit muddy, to be honest with you. So we're going to continue working on that just to make sure that those folks that want to apply for application to the statewide interop system don't have to do a lot of phone calling and head scratching. We can make sure that we make it as easy as possible and user-friendly as possible. So that's about all we have other than later in the agenda with the applications. So, yes, Chris.
Yes, Andy, one thing that helped out, I think, during the last UGC call was having the applicant on the phone during the review process. Do you think that might be something that we should consider also?
Yeah, and that's exactly. I agree 100%. Bob was on the call. There were some questions about Marion counties, and Martha is here today. She wasn't invited on. I don't even know if anybody had ever told Martha when we were having our call, because there was a lot of questions about Marion County Sheriff's application. To be honest with you, as we followed up with it, it was pretty simple. It was a pretty simple answer. So we're going to try to do that in the future is encourage those applicants to call in so we can answer questions. If we have to push them further in the agenda so they don't have to sit and wait, that's perfectly acceptable to us at the UGC. So again, and it was great for Bob to be able to answer questions from the different committee members.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you had any users and stuff that were at a lower level want to change to a different level yet? We've had.
Yes. And again, it goes back to that definition. Most everybody is approved through as a level 1, which is interoperable only. And really that's kind of how Marion County started in, but they're adding a significant number of devices and talk groups. They were, I think, like 22 talk groups is what they have allocated right now. So that's approaching operability. So if they don't bring additional resources on, then they're considered a level 2. If they're using it for operability only, that's going to be their day-to-day. That's going to be that level 2 user.
Is that process seamless? I mean, or do they have to reapply all over again, or just adding the devices?
They have to reapply. If anything changes on the application from the time that if the intent is, hey, I just want interoperability, I want to be able to communicate using Isicsb, if the need ever would come up, then that's great. But if they migrate and say, no, we're going to start adding talk groups, we're going to start adding devices, and we're going to start using this on a daily basis operably, then we ask that basically anything changes from one application or from your original application, yes, we ask to reapply. That's why we're trying to make it much more simple. Chris?
Yeah, and I can add to that too, because I'm working on that updated application process. One thing I'm working to add is sort of a clarification on what actually is the actionable item. Are you adding devices? Are you changing your user level? Are you wanting more talk groups? Are you going to be tying in councils? Are you adding infrastructure? What exactly is it? We're going to look at adding some things to help streamline the process after the application is approved as well, such as who's your vendor and who's going to be doing your programming, so that we know to get that information to them, and a lot of other things. So we're kind of taking a bottom to top to bottom look at this, and really figuring out where the hang-ups in the process are and figuring out ways to smooth those out.
And what's really helped from the UGC level is what we're going to be talking about today in new business. Under 19C5 is requesting access and participation plan revision. That's essentially it answers those questions of what does level 1 mean. So those have been defined in there because we've been shooting from the hip without guidance from our standards. So as those standards roll out, it's making things a lot more clear, a lot easier to manage. And again, our task is to continue to push and make it as easy as we possibly can, or at least be easy to fill out, if nothing else. So that the applicant is getting us the information that we need to do an app job on loading analysis, because that's really what we're concerned with at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to finance. Is Kelly Grosskirth happen to be on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you could proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair Lampy. Annual appropriation that we have from the state, we spent so far in fiscal year 2018, $83,633.30. We currently have $196,799.47 available. Of our SLIGP, our March expenditures were $8,053.32, and left in the grant is $189,551.87. And that, we just have the monthly report at this time. Short and sweet today.
Okay. The report financials are all published, correct, Ethan? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, they are.
Okay. We'll move on to governance, Chair Benson.
This will be brief. This month, the Governance Committee was given 5 standards to consider during their monthly meeting. Of that, or of the six, actually, we're given six. Of the six that you will see, we will be asking for approval of 5 of them during the new business portion of the meeting. One standard that related to computer-aided dispatch and air traffic information access connectivity we did not bring forward. I think it was a little bit of, when the committee was looking at it, they really didn't even understand what the hell they were reading. So we turned that back to work with Andy and some other folks to educate ourselves and work on that for our next meeting. But I will be asking for approval of the 5 that you see on the agenda. And when we do get to the new business portion, I'll kind of explain a little bit about some of the editing work we did inside of those. But other than that, that was the gist of our efforts for this month. Any questions?
Good. Okay, move on to operations. Chair Crable, are you on the phone? Do we have our vice chair, Marty?
Not able to participate in the meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to outreach. Chair Hagan.
We continue to send on to the people that we all have contact with. And if anybody wants to get on my mailing list, talk to me after the meeting and I'll put you on.
Okay. Sean, FirstNet.
So this will be pretty brief. Mostly I've been working on the grant with the new grant from SLIG 2, just trying to get clarification on what it is we can and cannot do with outreach as far as what's covered under the grant. We've been doing website updates. I expect that all of the Isicsb users will be updated by probably the end of next week on the Isicsb website on the map. We had some mapping issues, and so we made those changes. We've updated security multiple times. I don't know, I know Chair Lampy is probably getting tired of all the security updates, but as Mr. Lundstedt has said, it's not safe out there for any website, and security is one of those things you just are constantly updating on. We do have the RIC 4 coming up April 24th over in Council Bluffs at the Iowa School for the Deaf. And that'll be in our standard format. First half of the presentation will be by the Isicsb and giving updates on the Isicsb platform. The second half will be FirstNet and AT&T talking about what's coming with FirstNet and the rollout. So just so everyone knows, I know a lot of people, because we don't do the same format for AT&T's rollout of FirstNet as we do with Isicsb. I want you to know there are things going on. Chair Lampy, myself, and Swick Myers have been involved with New Albin, Iowa, and they are working on heavy infrastructure updates, and they're going through a lot of zoning things right now. Chair Lampy was asked to write a letter of support for creating this network. So I want you to know that AT&T and FirstNet are not sitting on their hands. They are aggressively getting out there, scouting new tower sites and getting ready to implement FirstNet in Iowa. I know you would prefer to see us showing the same kind of level of action like we do on Isicsb, but because it's AT&T, they're keeping that very close, and they prefer at this time not to share that. They may at some point in the future share the areas in which they're in, but I can assure you there are things going on right now. And we've already gone to one zoning meeting. We'll probably be going to another to make sure that public safety concerns are addressed while they're doing this. Because, you know, everyone thinks about the coverage, but they don't think about these big sticks in their backyard. And so we have to make sure that they know, okay, yes, and you've never allowed one of those sticks in your backyard before? No. Well, how good is your cellular coverage? Terrible. Okay, well, this is going to help public safety, and it may be a benefit as well to the local users. So that's a big part of what we do, is make sure that they understand these sticks are for public safety interests. There may be some side benefit to the local residents as well. Beyond that, that's what I have. The newsletter will be going out again next week. We have had some new things going on with IT county consultants. People have asked us, who would you contact for IT consulting? And we found a group of IT county IT people, and they go out and help people as a uninterested party of people who already work in similar roles. So that's pretty exciting, and that'll be part of the newsletter. We were presented that from the RIC too, so pretty exciting stuff. Any questions? All right.
Up to good work.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Training Committee, Chair Pavlik, you on the phone?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just making sure. I have a really short report. Our committee met via conference call at the end of the month, and we talked about a upcoming ComL Train the Trainer class, which is going to be a regional class. We will have a couple of individuals that are going to be in the class. Wally Walzer is one of those individuals. It will be held June 5th through the 7th in Cedar Rapids. If all of the seats do not get filled, then Iowa can have first dibs on additional seats. So as soon as I know more information about that, I will make sure that gets passed along to everybody. I know that Chris already talked about the ComX exercise that's coming up, and I know everybody's really excited about that. And I believe if you are still interested in participating, you can certainly contact Colonel Raj Hedgepath with regard to that exercise. We are looking into how we are going to roll out the regional training, and actually we are trying to work with Motorola as a condition of the Isicsb system. They are supposed to provide training, and so we're trying to work with them and see how we can get that handled. And I think that was pretty much all we talked about from there. So that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Denise on training?
Denise, this is Jason. Did you say that the ComL training, Train the Trainer, is that a 1-day or 2-day event? I didn't catch that.
It's June 5th through the 7th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, on to technology, Chair Updike.
Thanks. Okay, the Technology Committee met on March 22nd and April 3rd. Let me just give you a quick update. We're still dealing with the 800 SOA channel, so I'm going to attend the RPC meeting, and hopefully through some of the discussions there, whether it be today or in the future, we can maybe discuss some of our 800 megahertz plans and get that revamped possibly. We're still working on populating the programming guide. I think Chris has kind of been helping out with that. I wasn't able to attend my own meeting on the 3rd because I had to take care of some personal business right at 10 o'clock. So, but one of the things that I did do is I gathered up some information on testing subscriber units and sent that out to all of the committee members. I haven't read all of it because there's like 232 pages. But when you start digging into some of this testing of subscriber units, you come to find out it's pretty broad, and it's going to take some time to sort it all out because different users have different needs. And since Chris handled that call, he can, if you would like to expand upon some of your...
Yeah. I can go over some of the notes from that meeting, Chair Updike. That document that he mentioned, the testing protocol document, was what was discussed in depth. More or less, we went through that to a large degree, at least kind of the broad overview of it. And then we also talked about what other networks do when they're going to bring on subscribers, varying manufacturers, varying timelines, varying feature sets. to ensure that they will work the way they are expected to, because it's all about managing expectations, right? So there are some networks that place the responsibility on the local agencies to get that subscriber unit or other type of equipment to test before they actually bring it on. There are some agencies that will do the testing ahead of time and then publish an advanced list. And then there are some that don't have any formal process. It's kind of a laissez-faire type of deal where they say to check with the manufacturer that they're buying from to see if they're going to work before they buy, so that they have some sort of guarantee, and then go from there. The unique thing that we've found about this is that we kind of keep coming back to this need to perhaps keep it simple. And we're starting to look at what are some of our features that are must-haves, and push-to-talk comes to mind. TDMA, ability for a group call, which is basically related directly to the push-to-talk. Auto registration and affiliation, and intra-system roaming. So basically migrating from one Isicsb tower to the next were some of the features that were deemed to be most vital during that meeting. There's some desired functionality perhaps for devices that would be considered perhaps the next step up, or tier 2 or something like that. We understand we have to be careful in how we describe that, so we don't inherently tell people what to buy, because that's not our role or function. But we're looking at something that would be perhaps consistent regarding encryption that would follow Isicsb's policies or requirements or technical recommendations. Of course, there's a challenge presented with encryption that delves into a separate subcommittee. And then also the emergency group call was something that was mentioned as well. That's about where we are at this point, so we're starting to make some concrete progress. I would probably consider it a call where we had a small breakthrough, which is very positive and reassuring. With that, Chair Updike, I'll yield back to you.
Okay. I appreciate you doing that for me. Like I said, I had to attend to some other business, and that's pretty much it for the monthly report, other than for some new business that's coming up. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to other reports. Information sharing among board members is, I'm going to start that off with this National Telecommunicators Week. And I want to ensure that all of our telecommunicators are recognized in the state that for the jobs that they do each day, 24/7, holidays, weekends, nights, taking calls that aren't pleasant. For those of you who are in squad cars and ambulances, fire trucks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's our key to success for any event, for having that dispatcher take that initial call and get us to where we need to go. So I'd like to publicly thank anybody that's on the phone that's a telecommunicator, anybody in the room that is. Thank you. We really appreciate your service, and continue to support you any way we can. If there's, we do have a video I'd like you to watch. Kind of gives me a lump in my throat when I watch it, so hope it does the same for you. So go ahead, Ethan.
Where's your emergency? Hello? Hello? 1522-1033 Afford a Motel. Possible kidnapping in progress. 10-4. 2204.
And I try to go in with a positive attitude. You just do it, and you get in a habit of trying to come in and just do what you gotta do.
Personally, I think I don't do a whole lot of preparing. I think over 14 years, my mind has shut off a lot of the stuff that I hear, the things I imagine, because I don't see them, but the things I imagine, the pictures that are in my head. My memory has gone from really good to really poor in 14 years, and I think that that's my body's defense mechanism. So I don't generally take it home with me.
Probably the worst one is hearing a parent find their child, which, you know, is kind of goes against the law of nature a little bit.
As far as a good call, I think it's one of maybe several coping mechanisms that dispatchers get. I don't remember a lot of my calls. They kind of all run together. I think you do definitely remember your worst call, but sometimes the best ones are lost with all the routine.
You almost have to not want closure, because you won't generally get it unless it's a high-profile situation or you specifically ask for it. Otherwise, you just have to take the next incident, the next call, and move on while dealing with the things that happen. But the more serious calls we get closure on, but the everyday things we don't get any closure on. I talk to my husband a lot. He's pretty even keel. He keeps me focused and sane, really.
I love my job. I love being the first person that they call and ask for help. I love doing things like that I can help people, whether it's finding their lost dog or helping them, walking them through CPR on their boyfriend that just overdosed.
Because I don't want somebody else to do it, if that makes sense. It's really hard, and you almost shoulder all of that yourself, and if I'm not doing it, then someone else is going to hear these calls, and someone else is going to have to take care of it. So I'd like to be the one that is here kind of shouldering that burden almost. I trust myself to take care of people, and I have kids at home, so I want someone like me on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the radio. I want me to be taking care of those things. I want that control so I know what's going on and what needs to happen.
"911, where's your emergency?"
Mine could be the last voice you hear.
Thank you. That's the information sharing. As you all know, the board members, the SLIG P1 is done. We're out of that grant. SLIG P2 is now in effect as of March 1st. So as Sean stated, it's a little bit different this year. Number one, there's not as much money, and number two, we can only do certain things that we could do last year, we can't do this year. So we're working through that with FirstNet representatives and our program manager for the grant. As far as one more just kind of house cleaning here is keep your attendance at this board meeting. Make sure you're here, make sure you attend regularly. We do have to report that each month on your attendance. And if you miss more than 3 in a row, then I have to get a hold of some people and advise them of that. So make sure that you're here as much as you can be. And I'd also like to see if you can show up instead of always on the phone. It'd be nice if we see your face every once in a while. On the phone is fine. Sometimes that's what we have to do, but we do like to see our board members here. So try to do that as best as you can. As far as the system goes, I'm sure Melvin will go through this, but we're going to need what equates to a small army to do system testing here this spring and early summer. And we need your help. We need help from the RICs. I don't have enough troopers for that. So we'd like to have some marked units if we can. There's a certain vehicle that we need to use for the height of the antenna. So if we could, and Chris is on the RIC calls has been asking for that. So if you could give us some people for a while, and Melvin will tell us how many we need and how long it's going to be. But it's a tremendous importance to get that done, and it benefits the RICs in your region to ensure we're getting the coverage we paid for. So it's a benefit for you to help us, and then we all can collaborate and work together to get this done. So it keeps on track for July and August of this year. So appreciate your help. If you can offer it, that'd be great. Get a hold of Chris. He's kind of running that, and we can get that done. You have to, I think we have to check every half-mile grid in the state. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct? Every half mile? Or you got it down to an eighth of a mile? Okay. All right, that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything to share amongst ourselves? Go ahead, Jeff.
I need to announce this will be my last meeting. I have accepted a new position out in western Iowa that I start on the 30th, actually. So my last day with the DOT will be April 24th. And just want to say it was a pleasure to serve with everybody here. I've learned a lot, made some great friends, some great contacts. It's really been a great time. So thank you to everybody.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, for your service. Anything else?
Recently, or several months ago, Tom, you'd applied for, as I understand, a grant to get control stations for the peace apps. What's the status of that? Is that still?
That did not happen.
Okay.
We did not get that. It was a stretch in the first place. It was and John can elaborate if you need to, it was a anti-terrorism community. What was it, John? Prevention of terrorism in your community, and I tried to apply the response piece, but it didn't work. So
I understand.
You got to try though, right?
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I believe we are up to the program manager, Melvin.
Force. Are they everything like that? Car. Roll. Tall.
Morning. Report pretty interesting. We've been very active. Actually, I don't remember not being active in this project, but I figured there's a lot of good news here that I think it's worth pointing out. Again, I try to do it visually because there's so much data that we can kind of get lost in the noise. So let's start by, again, these are all the sites that we normally keep track of, and there's other sites that we don't keep track of because those are local municipalities or counties that decide they want to purchase local enhancements, and so they've done that. So even though we keep awareness of all that stuff, we don't track it because it's really, these are just separate projects. All right, so one of the things I did here was, I know that it's really hard to see the site names. And so for the most part, I haven't been showing that, but this time I figured it's probably worth showing out. And since I'm breaking everything out on a regional basis, it helps you be able to see all the site names throughout. So in Region 1, we have 23 sites, and hopefully you can see on the screen easier now all the site names throughout the state in Region 1. So we have, in that region, we have 3 sites that haven't started, and I'll go through that. But we have 3 active builds, civil completions, and civil F&E complete. Those are pretty decent milestones. What's changed from last time is I've highlighted here with the red circles. Audubon Out, for example, has gone to civil completion. That means that the tower, the shelter, generator, all the civil work has been completed at the site. If you notice over here, this little red dot, so if the dot is red, it means that we have power at the site. So we've been able to power it. One of the headaches with this is that getting power to the sites has been somewhat slow, right? It's kind of out of our control. We got to wait for the utility companies to do their thing. We got to get on their queues, and so all that process takes time. Some of the utility companies close down in the winter. They're starting to open up now. So it's been slow, and what happens if you have a site that doesn't have power, then that affects what you can do at that site plus the sites that it connects to. So it's sort of the whole daisy chain effect here. But most importantly, what I want to point out here is what's changed here at the Hardin site. We were stuck in regulatory. We are past regulatory, so we've ordered the tower. And also at Hooper, which is in Warren County, we've also completed regulatory, and we've ordered the tower for that. All right, in addition to that, we have over here the Marshal and Otama sites that we had completed civils, but we didn't have power yet. So now we do have power to those sites. So a lot of activity. If you look at Region 2, again, we have 11 sites in that region. Not a lot of changes here. Obviously, look at all these red dots. That means that we have power in all those sites. We have these 2 sites that we've completed civil, but we don't have power in those sites yet. One is an IPTV site, and the other one is a lease site. Those are the 2 sites that we haven't started the actual work. The good news is that the work is about to start within a week or 2 for both of those sites. Same deal over here for Calhoun and Region 1. I forgot to point that out. So why, when we look at not started, well, this is a lease site. We just ordered the tower for Hardin. We just ordered the tower for Hooper, and we're expecting to start next week. That means that by the time we meet next week, next month, these will be active civil sites. And depending on how things go, if we can move fast enough, we may even get 1 or 2 that are actually completed by then. Okay. Region 3, we have 14 sites. We've had 1 that changed status so in Palo Alto, we had ordered a tower last time around. We were waiting for resources to be made available. So we started working in Palo Alto now. So when we show here 1 site that's not started, that would be the IPTV site over here. Again, we provided the drawings. We have all the agreements in place. Again, all the IPTVs and the lease sites are just about to start. Okay. Region 4. We've had a lot of good changes here. We've had these sites that we had completed civil, but we didn't have power. Now we do. We have power in Shelby, we have power at Adair North and Adair South. That means that we can have our techs starting to do some work there as well. So in Region 4, there are no towers that haven't been started. So every tower has been started, completed, or in the process. Region 5, again, most of the sites have power. We have, as you can see here, 3 sites that haven't started. Those are the lease sites, which is Davis and Muscatine. And then we have an IPTV site in Keosauqua. So we currently have 2 sites that are active builds right now, Loiza and Beaverdale. And these other 3 are just about to start. Again, I was able to visit with the company that's leasing the sites. It's American Tower Corporation. We visited with them actually on Tuesday. So again, we have all the paperwork's done, all the insurance done, and so again, we're just about to start any moment now. And then Region 6, we have Cedar Falls, which is becoming active. So we have 3 active sites here, and 1 that hasn't been started because that's the Dubuque site, which is a leased tower site. So when I go through all the numbers, the one that we always focus on and that people, at least internal to Motorola, tend to focus on is what hasn't been started. And so we have a total of 10 sites that haven't been started, but if you work the numbers, 5 of those are lease sites, 3 of them are IPTVs, and then the 2 that we just ordered the towers for, which is Hardin and Hooper. So what this tells us is we've completed the regulatory process for all of the sites. We have no pending sites anymore. And that's a huge milestone for us because there's always that uncertainty if the one site moves, what happens to the sites that connect to it. And that's always a big challenge for us. And every time we've moved sites, some of these sites we've moved 7 times. We have some that we've moved actually 9 times. And it always trickles down to the adjacent sites. We've had run coverage every time we move a site to a new location, or we have to change the altitude, the elevation. We keep on running the coverage maps because it's a balance of connecting the sites and providing the required mobile coverage for the state, which is 95%. Right now, we're at roughly about 97% of the state being covered. So with the movements and the design adjustments, the performance has actually gotten better. So what we're looking at next is coverage testing. A couple of things I wanted to mention about that. We're looking at about 8 weeks of duration to do the coverage testing. This is going to be an automated bit error rate, and what that means is that we tell the system to put out a test pattern, and once it starts putting out a test pattern, we have computers with software that connect to radios and GPS, and we have a mag mount antenna that gets mounted to the top of a vehicle, and we use a GPS software to tell us, well, the way it's supposed to work is in these vehicles we'll have a driver. We prefer it to be law enforcement personnel. And then we have in the back a representative for the state and a representative for Motorola. The folks in the back are telling the driver where to go. As we're driving by, we see a map of the roads that we're targeting for testing, and we tell them turn left, turn right. And as we enter to each one of these tiles, the software automatically recognizes that it's inside a test tile, and it takes a whole bunch of samples, and then it either passes or fails a tile, and we move on.
You then talk on the radio, say, can you hear me now?
They can, but that's not how this is The Can You Hear Me Now is a subjective test. The bit error rate is objective, so it tells you exactly if you're passing or not based on the audio, but it's based on bit errors. So the way it works is a system like this, a digital system, when you look at an analog system, normally it's all about the signal strength. And the furthest you go, the audio quality starts degrading over time, and then eventually you can't understand it anymore. In a digital system, we have what's called forward error correction. So there is the voice information, and then that's encapsulated with error bits that can fix problems with the audio. So when you capture it on the other side, if there's problems, the error correction algorithm actually fixes the problems. So in order for it to work correctly, that means that we can accommodate up to 2% bit error rate in order to satisfy the quality of the audio that's required by the RFP. So the software knows, because it's all digital, it knows exactly what is your bit error rate, and if it exceeds 2%, then it fails the test style. So it's really it's automatic, so you don't have to do the "Can you hear me now" thing. Although some people like to do that anyway, but overall, it's really all about the bit error rate.
Will the test vehicle be in motion when it's doing the sampling, or do
Correct.
they stop and go?
No, it has to be in motion. Yes, we have. See here, we're looking at about 100,000 test tiles for the state, and these test tiles are 3/4 miles. And we're looking at between 10 and 12 teams to do this at the same time. Yes.
Melvin, this is Chris. So for the 2% bit error rate, that's with the desired audio quality that was spec'd on the RFP.
Correct.
The Can You Hear Me Now test, if I follow this right, we're actually testing this to a higher standard than Can You Hear Me Now. So you, in theory, could have a bit error rate of 5% or more and still get the audio through, right?
If you have more than 2% error rate, you start hearing some of the garbling.
Okay.
And that. Is it intelligible? Yes, but the requirement is a specific line that says a delivered audio quality of 3.4, which is the highest for public safety. You can go as far as 4, but then that gets really expensive.
Yeah, so more or less, it's going to exceed basically the minimum of being able to decipher what's being said. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
How fast is the vehicle going when you're testing?
You can go as fast as you want, which at 100,000 test tiles, I would recommend going really fast.
I love their roads.
And this is one of the reasons why we talked about working with other stakeholders, because it is grueling, it is hard. Most folks are excited about it the first day. By the time the third day, they just, they'd rather cycle somebody else through because it gets old. The cool thing is that you get to see a lot of very, very unique places that you didn't even know were there. I've driven around looking at some of this stuff, and I found a town called Melvin, which I was excited about. And there's a place, and my PM took a picture, I should have brought it in here, where we found Iowa has the largest, the largest popcorn ball. So I said, hey, this is really great. So you're going to find a lot of places that you didn't know were there, and you're also going to run into places that people don't want you there, which is why we want law enforcement to be involved in this. I think I mentioned this before, we've done it before with Department of Transportation personnel, but we've learned that people get really suspicious because they think that their property is being looked at for building a road or something like that. So in order to accommodate this, we're looking at segmenting each region, splitting them in order to do something that's manageable and that the tool can handle. So we came up with two subregions within a region, and that's basically how we come up with 12. So we have an A and a B, for example, in Region 1. So this is the more obscure areas here. That would be 1A. The lighter would be 1B. Same deal over here, Region 2, Region 3, and so forth. In terms of number of test tiles, these numbers would give you a better idea. So Region 1, you know, the eastern side is over 16,000 test tiles, and the western side would be about 7,000 test tiles. So right now here we're showing we have 14,351, but not all of those test tiles can be tested because some of these places you just can't reach. The software requires, you know, in order to be statistically significant and meaningful, it requires a minimum of test tiles, which we've basically made it. If you go below a certain level, then statistically the number doesn't become very accurate, so the more test tiles, the better. So I want to show this concept so it would help you better understand. So in this case, I'm zooming in because it's really hard to look at it, you know, when you're looking at the entire state. So if I look at the Des Moines metro area here, this is what this map shows, and this is how we would grid it, right? So we would have all these test tiles over this, and as we're driving through, which is a red dot, the samples get taken, and the test tile, in this case, I'm expecting them all to pass, so I make them green. Right, so as you drive by, some of these test tiles, you get the little corner of it, some of them will be in the middle. It all depends on the specifics of the road. So as you make it through, again, this is just one road that we're showing here. You imagine doing this for the entire state. So if I were to just, as an example, in this particular area, well, now you would see that in this case, you know, we have a couple, you can see it here, right, a couple of red squares. These would be squares that failed, and then everything else is green. So at a statewide level, this is kind of what we expect to see. A wall of green with a couple of dots red here and there. At the end, we'll be producing a report that says what we did, how we did it, and then there's going to be some very long tables. So here I'm providing an example of a local county that I did in Missouri. In this case, so you can see that we have, and this is a lot of pages. In this case, it was 102 pages for one county. So that gives you an idea of how much data there is. So in this case, for example, here's our test tile number 1. And we can give them grid numbers, X and Y, and all that kind of stuff. In this case, even though we're looking for the bit error rate, we still are able to gather the received signal indicator, as an example. So we get all that stuff and we dump it in here because the tool just creates a huge file, which at the end of each day, we can just take that, dump it, and then eventually we build these files so that anybody can take a look at it. So in this case, you can see that for test tile number 1, we achieved a bit error rate of 0.4%, so the target is 2%, so we obviously pass. Here's a couple of fails, like down here, this is test grid 13. We got a bit error rate of 4.4, so this particular test grid failed. So you'll get this, but just at a much larger scale. And we'll probably just split it on a regional basis just to try to make it somewhat manageable for somebody to look at. That's all I had. Any questions?
Is there a particular time of year that's best
to do the cover testing? We want foliage, so we don't want to start until spring starts, but you know, you go through the rainy season, which is a real pain when you're doing coverage testing. So we prefer, you know, early, like really early summer, right? So it all depends. I think, you know, you can go anywhere from, again, depending on the region, spring starts earlier and some, you know, the further south you go, right? So You can go anywhere from April through September to do the cover assessment.
Okay.
So overall, you know, the biggest thing here is that we passed all the regulatories. That means we can consider the system locked down, which means that now we have a certain stamped, you know, stop a view of what the coverage looks like. So it's no longer fluctuating because all the sites are locked down. We know where we stand, and we're continuing to build and add sites. You know, as an example, Region 4 will be doing the outreach, which we already have sites available and up and running out there in Region 4, which is Council Bluffs area. So you have a radio in Council Bluffs area, you can still talk to people over here right now. So we're, you know, as we add more, it just gets better.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sure.
Okay, move on to OEC update, Mr. Lundstedt.
Good morning. Chair Lampe, thank you for emphasizing the fact that it's Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Proud to say that I started my career in public safety a little over 45 years ago as a public safety dispatcher. They are truly the unsung heroes of this business. It is tough work and underappreciated. As I mentioned to the 911 Council this morning, I heard the call from Hertz Donut. I just didn't know how many to buy and wasn't sure that my credit limit was sufficient, but you can do something about that. Two things to start this off. I want to reemphasize something DHS and the FBI have been messaging in the last couple of weeks. We've been noticing an increased threat of ransomware. This is in the news. It shouldn't be news to you, but we are seeing a significant uptick in the challenges brought about by ransomware over the last several weeks. And there was actually an information bulletin put out by the U.S. Computer Emergency Response Team, U.S. CERT, which is part of our NKIC, talking about this, talking about best practices and reemphasizing the importance of some things that your CIO does a great job of messaging. I'm on their information security bulletin, but things like locking down the venerable USB ports on your computers, whether it's in dispatch or the patrol car, understanding what kind of fun things we can bring you on a USB, as well as the importance of remaining vigilant to defend against both phishing attacks with a PH and spear phishing attacks, which are becoming much more malevolent. They come with some very interesting details, including your name and a coworker's name, and talking about something that appears to be in your organization to entice you to click on that link or open that attachment. Bad juju.
Hi, I'm Edina City Manager Scott Neal, and you're watching On the Job, a show where we reveal the city employees that keep Edina going and show you some things that can only be learned.
That's interesting.
On the job.
Hey, it's malware, right? Okay. Yeah, I'll send you the $300, I promise. Oh, that's the YouTube video? Okay, all good. There you go. Sorry, my F5 push there must have brought along a little malware. The other thing I wanted to brief you on today, and I will keep this very short, I want to brief you on something that SAFECOM, the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators, and OEC are working on to evolve the communications unit as it exists within NIMS today. As somebody who has worked with the communications sector, the communications function with the National Wildland Coordinating Group for wildfire for many years, one of the things that we've seen is an evolution where there was a time when simple radio, conventional channels, tactical repeaters, antennas thrown in trees, that was where it was at. We could do everything with an overhead team and a tactical repeater. In the 1990s, we started thinking about things like health and welfare, and oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had a simple telephone on the fire line at the base camp so you could call home? Well, fast forward to 2010. Who calls home on a phone? I want to text. I want to email. So we started seeing resources brought in to provide basic internet connectivity. Fast forward to 2018, I want my broadband. I want my broadband now. And we see this increasingly, not only at planned events, but at disasters. So our problem statement here simply says that the ComL and ComT often are challenged to support IT, information technology needs, at the scene of a disaster response. So SafeCom, NICSWIC, and OEC have been looking at where does this go? What we find is that we've taught for years anything can be done within the communications unit by bringing a technical specialist on board. Oh, the IT technical specialist, they got it all. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. And we're looking at actually notionally changing NIMS to create what's called the communications section, headed by a communications section chief. You'll see it there on the top line in the gray box. Again, notional, pre-decisional, but the idea is to actually acknowledge and create a position for an IT service leader, ITSL. You still see the traditional ComL, ComT, incident, tactical dispatcher, radio operator, so forth under the ComL, but under the CFC will be this IT service branch headed by an IT service leader. This is all driven by a very deep dive into what are the types of information that we have to put together to build a tactical local area network to support an incident. And for those of you who have been through ICS and recognize an ICS 205 there at the bottom center, this one will be bounded by things like IP addresses, gateways, resources that recognize the evolution of communications to include IP as opposed to simple radio channels and telephone numbers. The essential functions have been mapped for the IT service leader. Not only will they have to be responsible for network management and a help desk, you cannot imagine the amount of challenges that we fight with, oh, I need my battery charged, or do you have a replacement for this or that are well outside the traditional communications area. Now start thinking about tablets and all of the other fun stuff that we present. And you can see where you will have many different functions within this as it escalates from a type 3 all the way up to a type 1 incident. We've socialized this with key stakeholders in FEMA, FireScope, the National Wildfire Coordinating Group, and others. You see their acronyms there. There appears to be broad consensus that this is the way forward. Iowa has been very successful in getting ComLs, ComTs, and others credentialed and recognized. That's why I'm sharing this with you, even though it is pre-decisional. We've actually created position task books. We have some guidance to put this together. We've utilized subject matter experts from areas such as the Cisco Rapid Response Team and others who have supported incidents on a disaster. And we've actually come up with these various classifications, including, for those of you who remember ICS 300, and we literally poured the planning pea on your head until you screamed, "Uncle." We now have the data D, which talks about the essential elements of data support for an incident. And there's all the components of what the IT service unit leader course will involve. Finally, a timeline. This is moving along at a fairly rapid pace. Now, let me first caveat that when we talk about changing NIMS doctrine, it's actually easier to watch paint dry. But NIMS was just refreshed, and you will see something from me tomorrow that we have a FEMA comment period open on new positions, specifically talking about EOC management, and the timing is pretty good for this. We're actually going to deliver the alpha and beta courses in June of this year for the IT service leader, and this we think will track along fairly quickly. Now, when I say fairly quickly, in NIMS speak, that means maybe less than 3 years, so stay tuned. That's the end of my presentation on that. I just want you to be aware the future is broad, the future is challenging, and the SWICs and SafeCom are doing their best to get ahead of this. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to Standards Working Group. Ethan, get an update on that?
Yep. Standards Working Group held their third standards workshop on March 27th at DPS headquarters. 7 standards were reviewed and discussed, with 6 of those being finalized and being sent to governance. 1 was tabled until the next workshop. Due to the amount of standards that need to be approved by the Isicsb board, it was discussed and ultimately decided that after this next workshop, every 3 weeks, we're going to hold another workshop, just due to the amount of standards trying to get these done, because it's not a quick process at all. So that next workshop is going to be this coming Tuesday, April 17th in Dallas County in Adel. So that's all I have. Any questions? Thanks.
Good, thanks. Skip to the new business. AT&T is not here today. Old business, we have none. New business, approval. Chair Buffington, back to you.
Yes, the user group committee has reviewed the 2 new applications from Monona County and Union County, as well as the amended applications from Adair, Guthrie EMA and the Marion County Sheriff, and recommend approval for that by the full Isicsb board in the form of a motion.
We have a motion on the floor for Monona County Dispatch, Union County LEC, Adair, Guthrie EMA amended, Marion County Sheriff amended. Are those all level 1s?
No, Monona and Union are level 1, Adair, Guthrie, and Marion are level 2.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion. Steve Pavlik.
Okay. Denise, the second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passed. We are to license 16 air to ground. Patrick, back to you.
Okay, so we've all seen the 16 channels before of the 700 air-to-ground channels. The plan, I'm just giving you a brief history so you know what you're getting into. They're laid out by region. You've got simplex channels, repeater channels. They have to be licensed with the FCC. Anybody can license these channels, but we've already laid them out by region. And also, we've designated one as an statewide air-to-ground channel and a statewide landing zone channel. So that way, any of your inbound aircraft to an event can switch to that one particular channel. So I just wanted to make sure that we did this, the usual way, which was to go through the board to get approval to license it. So we've done some research on it. Got some information of what it would cost. You're looking at most $480 to license these channels. So I guess I'm going to make a motion that the Isicsb board go ahead and license these 16 air-to-ground channels in the 700 megahertz band and not to exceed $600.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to license these channels not to exceed 600. Do I have a second?
Grosskreutz will second that.
Okay, Grosskreutz seconds it. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Patrick, I've got one question for you on this. So how are we going to manage, or is there for push to talk for the landing zones? Because there's so many different fire departments, there's different folks that actually manage a landing zone. So what's going to be everybody's authority, or are you just going to let everybody do it, or how are we going to manage who has push to talk?
Okay, ICS would have to take all that.
I mean, I would think that all of your mobiles are, if you're going to have multi-band radio.
You got your mic on?
If you're going to have multi-band or single-band radios within your vehicles, obviously you're probably going to want to map this in there. We're still working on some of the planning stuff, but, a lot of it's laid out in the NIFOG handbook anyways. But, I think we still need to expand upon that, some of the way you conduct yourself type things. But when it comes down to whatever you do with your fire department out in the middle of a cornfield with an inbound helicopter, I would think that that's going to have to be in part up to your incident command system to say, hey, truck one, go to landing zone channel.
Right, for operational, but I mean, but who's gonna, so if the Isicsb board has this channel, who's gonna have the authority to program push to talk on there?
Your vendor would have to program that in. Here again, part of the plan is to come up with some wording that says this is how you'll conduct yourself while operating under a blanket authorization to run on those channels. We're working on that.
Okay.
I don't know, am I answering the question or?
Yeah, because there's some folks that will have the authority, because we talk about who should have the authority to talk on various talk groups and stuff.
Well, let me say this much. Go out and license it yourself. I mean, if fire department XYZ wants to license these, I mean, we don't have sole control over these. Anybody can license these channels. If you want to do that on your own, within your own agency, knock yourself out, and then you can set your own rules. But
am I clear for these air to ground channels? Excuse me, since the board is going to be licensing these, would we treat them any differently than the regional or the statewide interop channels? I mean, so they're essentially yours to use. It's going to be a local decision at the end on who's going to get to, and that goes back to incident command. Am I correct in that thinking?
Yeah.
So we need a policy on how you use them if you use them.
Yeah, I if you're going
to. It kind of goes back to, right now today, what do we have? Mutual aid, we land the bird. That's how I do it. That's it. So in the future, you can either continue to use that on the ground, or you can use these, right? Is that the option?
Right.
It's just another set, right?
Right. It's the overall intent is to enhance what's already out there, and that way you may not need to tie up system resources on the system when you're standing right next to each other at a landing site.
So there's some that use the system, and then there's some that are just direct radio to radio, simply.
Right. I may not even need to use the system.
Right. But you shouldn't. It's pretty high, right?
Right. Well, especially if it's right out there by that umbrella.
Okay.
So.
To answer your.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's not going to be really complex for the local fire departments to have that authority to be able to transmit on these new frequencies.
See that happening.
Okay.
Coordination on interdepartmentally, here's what we're going to do. But then you got to make sure that the bird understands that the switch to that or to use that for that incident, right? Because they're all, I can tell you right now, they're all used to mutual aid.
Right, right.
It's what we use.
And there's some interest from that outfit over in Council Bluffs. I did get a call from Jason Studi because he had some calls with Life Flight, whatever.
They have an application, or at least an interest in.
Right. So there's definite interest in it.
Okay, great.
Good. Move on to there you are. John, go ahead.
So as I had mentioned before, we are bringing forward, we were presented with 6, we're bringing forward 5. Before I talk, I'm not going to go through each of them in depth in any way, shape, or form, but I want to thank first Ethan for he participates in those calls, and as we make edits to any of the standards that we see, he's actually doing them, so it saves me a gigantic headache of trying to interpret my own writing. He actually just does it on the phone with us, so when we present these, he's already done the work of editing these, so that's been a great help to the committee as well. Just for example, with the 5 that you've got here, the second one that's listed, scanning, I mean, for some of these we do simple English-related edits. Other of them are more clarification type of edits, and some of them actually get into some far-reaching things. For example, on the second standard, the scanning standard, inside of that standard, there is another standard that doesn't exist yet. So we've got to figure out, we recommend the standard to go forward, but we have to bear in mind that we're waiting for that other standard to come forward as well. So you'll start to see then, we had a good discussion about how we're going to be referencing standards inside of standards. and proper ways to label those. So that'll be one thing we'll be working on as we go forward and keeping an eye on. Having said that, and not wanting to prattle on like a little old lady, I would make a motion that the board adopt the emergency button standard, scanning standard, plain language standard, radio site access permission standard, requesting access and participation plan revisions standard.
Okay, a motion on the floor for approving those 5 standards listed on the agenda. Emergency button scanning, plain language, radio site access permission, requesting access and participation plan revision. Do I have a second?
Buffington will second.
Chair Buffington's a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, your motion passes. Thank you. We're moving on to public comment. If anybody would like to take the podium and address the board, you can do that this time. Okay. Motion for adjournment. So moved. We're adjourned.